Lease violation, the lease violation, giving out lease violations. So, as the affordable housing property manager, you're going to have to give out lease violations. I want to also reiterate that giving out lease violations is sometimes when you're starting out in the affordable housing field, the affordable housing industry. I want to encourage you to give out as many lease violations as you can. Some managers are discouraged or uncomfortable, especially if you're new to this, because basically, you feel uncomfortable because you're giving a family, a household, a piece of paper saying that they broke their lease and it's very serious. And if they keep breaking their lease, they can be evicted. So it's very serious. And obviously, that family, that tenant's going to have an attitude about it. They're going to have a feeling about it because you've served them a lease violation. I know some managers that refuse to serve lease violations because they think that, oh, I'm here to help my people. These are my people. I can't serve lease violation to my people. That is a load of crap. You have to be impartial. Doesn't matter who any tenant is, whether if you feel some sort of connection to them or not, you have to be impartial. You have to treat everybody the same. It has to be fair. That's what fair housing is. Fair housing basically means that if two people break the rules, both people are going to get a lease violation, not the one that's friends with the manager and not the one that the manager doesn't like. So that's what lease violation is. And that's why it's very important that you're handing out lease violations so that your tenants know that you are impartial. What does impartial means? That means that you are fair, that you're not taking a side. You cannot have favorites. You cannot have a favorite tenant. It doesn't work that way. You're gonna open yourself up to a bigger problem. Sometimes some managers they'll feel uncomfortable because they might be giving up the possibility of being friends with their tenants if they're too strict. We talked about that before. Lease violation is a way to document instances of bad behavior. And I want to reiterate that as time went on, as the years went on, I've actually had to give out less lease violations. When I first started out as an assistant manager, a lot of people would break the rules. And honestly, it was my fault. It was my fault that all my tenants were breaking the rules when I was starting out because I was a new manager. I was green. I was brand new, and you could tell when you've been doing this a long time and you meet another affordable housing property manager, I could tell just by looking at you, I could tell if you about it or not. Okay? And if I can't tell just by looking at you, I'll talk to you for a bit and then I'll know for sure if you about it or not. And the tenant, the professional tenant, he knows too. Okay? He or she knows too. The professional tenant, he or she will come into your office and take one look at you and know if you about it or not. So when the tenants break the rules a lot, I blame myself because I was a new manager. How could I be on top of everything and be really about it if I'm a new manager? I haven't done anything. At that time, I hadn't done shit in property management. I haven't contributed shit to the field of property management. I will. I did, but not then. Okay. And I tell you the same thing too. If you're starting out, you haven't done anything in the field, you haven't learned anything. You will. Give it time. Okay. When you start getting very, very good at the job, what they say, and you start understanding it and you become a stronger, better manager, you'll have to give out less lease violations because the residents they'll kind of get it when they come into the office and meet you for the first time. They'll kind of understand that this is somebody who knows their job, knows the lease, and will give me a lease violation, and specifically knows how to give me a lease violation too, versus somebody who doesn't know. So that's one of the things that you're going to have to deal with, and it's all a learning curve. But basically, when you get really good, when you learn the lease, so to give the lease violation, you have to learn your lease. You have to get the lease for your property, and you have to go one by one And you have to read each line item and specifically understand what they're preventing the residents from doing and understand why we're doing it. Why, and ask yourself, why don't they let the residents do this? Ask yourself, if all the residents just started doing that, would this place still be able to run properly? Probably not. So that's why we do it, basically. If one person can't do it, then nobody can do it. If one person can do it, everybody can do it. And that's how the lease works. And the lease is also there to protect you and protect the property. So the most common lease violations that you would ever have to give out would possibly be with parking, failure to pay rent, failure to show up to income qualify, and maybe some problems with other tenants. Maybe. But like I said, if as time goes on, once you've given out a lot of them, you kind of learn like how to manage the situation so that it doesn't get to that point. Okay? But when you're starting out as an assistant manager, it's very important that you give out lease violations. And sometimes you don't even have to give out. Here's a trick. I'll give you a free trick. Sometimes you don't even have to give out the lease violation. Sometimes you need to just document the behavior, put it on a letter. I'll make another video about notices. Put it on a letter and include specific verbiage. Say you are in violation of your lease. Okay? You are in violation of your lease and you got a lease violation is two different things, because the lease violation will say lease violation, and a letter from you saying you are in violation of the lease is basically like an effort giving the tenant a chance to correct this. You want to give your tenants a chance to correct this. And that's what I mean too, is that when you're giving people a lease violation, you got to ask yourself, what's the story behind it? Because 9 out of 10, if there's a problem, most of the time I'll go talk to the tenant and we'll fix the problem. And it's not, and then so where would the lease violation come from? Okay. And if you have to talk to them and send them letters and have meetings and have witnesses in the meetings and come up with plans, you got to show that you're willing to work with the tenant, because most of the time the tenant doesn't really want to break the rules. It's kind of like an inconvenience to them, and that's why they're doing it. They're trying to see if they can get away with it. And your reaction to these things and the way that you handle these things will determine the tenant satisfaction, will determine whether or not you have to give a lease violation, and it also determine on how the tenant views you. Okay, you want the tenant to view you as a professional, seasoned, skilled manager that is skilled in conflict resolution, not someone who's just like, oh, that's a problem, lease violation. Oh, that's a problem, lease violation. Because you can do that. Some managers are like that. But then what's going to happen when that lease violation holds no more weight? Because everybody in the property's got one already. Then what you going to do? You're fucked. You will not be able to control anyone here. And if you can't control anyone here, you're going to have a really hard time, especially if you're on site. It's going to have a very hard time. So the lease violation is a document. You could post it on the doors. But like I said, most of the time you want to talk to your tenants. Talk to your tenants, figure out the problem. If the tenant is seriously uncooperative, and there exist the tenants that are uncooperative. There exist the combative tenants, the extremist tenants, the ones who are against the office. I've met them before. And those are the ones you can't reason with. You can't, because they're not on your team. They're not on your side. There's some people, some tenants who are specifically against management and specifically will do things against management, and no amount of reason, no amount of meetings will fix it, because that's their mission. And you have to respect that. You have to respect, if that is the tenant's mission, you have to respect that that's how they want to live their life. So then you have to serve the lease violation, because you had meetings, you've talked to the tenant, you've tried to reason with them. They will not budge on this. So then you have to serve the lease violation. And that's the true moment when you serve the lease violation. And the lease violation, make sure you always save a copy. Always save a copy of the lease violation, because you got to put them in a file and they have to add up. And when the tenant has multiple lease violations, like 2 or 3, they can move out. You can have them move out because they've had so many lease violations. So you have to document all these instances, and you got to keep them in the file, and you have to track them because these are items that will appear in court. Also, when you're doing a lease violation, you want to, the last thing is you take the lease of your property, you take that paragraph that's on the lease, and you copy and paste that paragraph exactly how it is, and you put that on the lease violation, and you say they broke this sub paragraph. You don't got to tell them what they did. You got to tell them you did this, you did that. You just say you violated this lease and this paragraph of this lease, and you put a copy of it. That's all you got to do. 9 out of 10, they're going to come in, they're going to complain about the lease violation. But like I said, if anybody comes in and tells you, what the fuck, why am I getting a lease violation? They should already know why they're getting it, right? They should already know that we've had conversations, we've talked, we've had meetings. It should come as no surprise that they're getting a lease violation. If they are surprised, then you also have to back it up. You got to show that they broke the lease. But like I said, you have to talk to your tenants. So it's a two-way thing. Look, I'll make it simple for you. If you're assistant manager, give out as much as you can. Once you become manager, talk to your tenants more.